I've driven them all. 4Cams, GTOs, Daytonas. The Dino's the one I always come back to. Is it the fastest Ferrari ever? No, not even close. But is it one of the most engaging Ferraris of all time? Is it the one you want to run through the gears time and time again? Is it the one when you need to take a 1,000-mile tour or take a road trip that you say, let's throw the bags in that car? It sure is. Considered a budget sports car when new, the Ferrari Dino has appreciated in value at a rate unmatched by many of its competitors. It seems the market has finally caught on to the secret that is the Dino 246. And while values have stabilized a bit since 2017, in May of 2021, a number 2 excellent condition Dino Spider is valued at $358,000, while a number 1 concourse condition Dino Spider will set you back just over $400,000. This video review is intended to give an overview of what it's like to buy a Ferrari 246 Dino, but keep in mind that values change over time. For even more details and up-to-date information, please click the link below for the full buyer's guide on Hagerty.com. The Ferrari Dino has a really interesting backstory. In the 1950s, Alfredo Ferrari, Enzo's son, convinced his father to let him design V6 and V8 powered racing cars. Now, the old man wasn't a big fan of anything other than his traditional V12 powered cars. But as every parent knows, you have to let your kids do what they want once in a while. Yet by the mid-1960s, a revolution was underway. Dino Ferrari had unfortunately passed at a very young age, and the market for supercars and sports cars was moving on as well. People were moving engines around. The Lamborghini Miura, the first mid-engine supercar, hit the scene in 1966. And in 1967, Ferrari introduced the 206 Dino. It was a first in a lot of ways for Ferrari. It was a mid-engined, V6 powered road car. It was not his traditional V12 powered expensive sports car. And as such, he wanted to protect his company's reputation and also give the new mid-engine V6 car its own identity. There isn't a Ferrari badge to be found on a Dino. Now mind you, it's a Ferrari product. It's made by Ferrari. Everything on it is touched by Ferrari. But they weren't Ferraris. The first Dino model was the 206. It was introduced in 1967. By 1969, the 246 Dino was introduced. The 246 Dino, as you might have guessed, was a 2.4-liter 6-cylinder, mounted sideways behind the passenger compartment. The 5-speed transaxle, 4-wheel power disc brakes, rack and pinion steering. They also rated the Ferrari parts bins for a lot of the stuff seen in other Ferrari road cars. The seats are very similar to a Daytona's. The gauge cluster is very similar to a Daytona's. And the result? Well, it's one of the best Ferrari road cars of all time. Walking around the Ferrari Dino, it's undeniable it's one of the most beautiful cars ever produced, and even one of the most beautiful Ferraris of all time. In fact, despite falling out of favor with Ferrari purists for so long, today it is considered one of the top 10 Ferraris of all time. The story goes that when Sergio Pininfarina penned the design that would become the Ferrari Dino, he showed it to Enzo Ferrari and said, "You must build this car," or something like that. I was in another room at the time. But Enzo agreed, and they built the Dino. It was their first mid-engine sports car. It was their first reasonably priced sports car. It was designed to compete with the Porsche 911 and other sports cars that were far less expensive than Ferrari's top-of-the-line V12 cars. Now personally, I'd rather drive a cut-rate Ferrari than an expensive Volkswagen, but I'll leave that to you to make your own decision. The 246 Dino was built from 1969 through 1974. In those years, there were 3 series of 246 Dinos. The Series 1 cars featured magnesium wheels with a center knockoff nut that was carried over from the 206 Dino. These were built through late 1970. The Series 2 model was built for about the next year through late 1971, and that transitioned to a 5-lug bolt-on wheel, as this car has. Another way to identify a Series 2 car is the windshield wipers. They were called hand clap wipers because they parked on top of each other, and when they operated, well, they looked like somebody clapping their hands. The Series 3 car basically incorporated the refinements and changes needed to import and sell the 246 Dino in the United States. And these Series 3 cars were built from 1972 through 1974. The 246 Dino GTS Spider, such as this example, was only available during that 3rd series of production. And it featured this removable Targa top. There were 2,295 Dino GT, that is the hardtop coupe, produced. And there were 1,274 GTS Spiders produced from just 1972 to 1974, making them the rarest of the 246 Dinos. As with any vintage sports car, especially one from Italy, pay close attention to the condition of the body. Rust is, as always, a rather large issue with these cars. Built-in water traps abound, and the rocker panels, fenders, nose, frame rails, everything is susceptible to rust. The other issue is these were too cheap for too long and often fell into hands of people that couldn't afford to maintain them properly. So beware, while a lot of Dinos are nice and shiny today, they may not have always been like that. Do your homework, try to find out as much of the history of any particular car that you are looking at, and poke around it with somebody who knows where and what to look for on a Dino. Under the hood of all 246 Dinos is the same quad-cam, 3-Weber carbureted, 2.4-liter V6. It's a rugged workhorse of an engine. It loves to rev to 7,600 RPM, and there really aren't a lot of problem spots. Some cars had issues with the sodium-filled exhaust valves breaking, but usually that happened pretty early in a car's life, and that typically has been repaired by now. There are a few maintenance items you need to be aware of. The timing chains have a manual tensioner that has to be adjusted when they are serviced. The one on the rear bank is easy to get to. The one on the front bank, however, is difficult to get to and often overlooked. So you need to make sure that when you listen to the engine run, you don't hear that front timing chain slapping around. There's nothing overly exotic under this hood. Everything is easy to service, the parts are readily available, and unlike modern Ferraris, you don't have to worry about an engine out service to change a timing belt or water pump or anything like that. Now the 5-speed transaxle, if mistreated, is like every other Italian car out there. The synchronizers are not as robust as you would find in many other transmissions, so if they're slammed around by a ham-fisted driver who doesn't care or doesn't let them get up to temperature first, you will find weak synchros, especially 2nd and 3rd gear. A good test for this is start the car cold and gently try to shift to 2nd gear. If you feel a crunch, it probably is going to need a 2nd gear synchronizer soon. The chassis number for a Dino, besides being on the data plate inside the driver's door jamb, is also engraved into the chassis itself on the driver's side of the engine compartment. You always want to check this and make sure it looks legitimate and like it left the factory. Now normally during one of these buyer's guides, this is the point where we would put the car up on a hoist and show you the chassis. However, the way a Dino is constructed with the power plant in the back, all that's really underneath the car are the coolant pipes leading to the radiator in front, and that's it. Most of the servicing is done directly underneath the engine, or you remove a wheel and remove the inner wheel liner and you work through the wheel well to get at the distributor and the water pump, the drive belts, the air conditioning compressor, and any of the normal maintenance items. Now from a practicality standpoint, the Dino actually has a pretty usable trunk. The problem is, the trunk is right behind the engine and right in front of the exhaust pipes. So if you put anything in here you plan to wear to a formal occasion, make sure you put it inside a couple of hefty bags first, because it will either turn to liquid or it will smell like the unburnt fuel that exits through the 4 exhaust pipes. Another thing that is critical when you are looking at purchasing a Dino is make sure you get all of the original books and the tools. There's a safety triangle, there's a jack, there's a Dino key fob. These are all things that are extremely valuable and hard to replace. So when you hear people talk about Ferrari Dinos, one of the top questions is usually, is it a flares and chairs car? Well, let me explain to you what that is. From the factory, Ferrari would cut this nice wheel arch open and add a flat piece of metal around to make a wider wheel arch. That was done to cover the wider wheels that came with the flares and chairs option. Now on the outside, we talked about what it means to have flares. Well, by chairs, they mean the seats. And these seats, as you can see, are all one color. On a car with the chairs, these slats would be a Daytona-style seat insert, which would be alternating between the interior color and a black slat with ventilation holes. You need to remember that Fiat was in charge of the bottom line for Ferrari during these years, and Fiat did not like spending a lot of money. So many of the plastic items and trim items are not very robust. You need to look for broken plastic pieces, broken levers, and switchgear. Most of it is available today, but again, it is a Ferrari, so you're not going to get those items inexpensively. The dashboards were originally covered in this thick leather with a flocking they call mouse hair. The mouse hair usually wears off, as it has on this car, and when the mouse hair is gone, you end up with a smooth leather dashboard. You can have the dashboard redone in this low glare, kind of flocking mouse hair material, but unless you're going to show the car, it probably doesn't matter. Other things to look out for on the interior of a Dino are the door pockets. They're made out of plastic, and unfortunately, most people try to shut the door by grabbing the door pocket and pulling the door closed. How you shut a door in a Dino is you take your index finger and you put it in the index finger hole, which is made to shut the damn door. See? It's easy. No need to break that. Another item that always fascinates people are the sun visors. The windshield is relatively low. After all, the car is just over 43 inches tall. How to get a sun visor in here? Well, Ferrari put rolling sun shades, so you can pull them down and they suction cup to the windshield. Overall, the interior of a Dino is a very comfortable place to be. The US cars have air conditioning, which is oddly effective. They have power windows, full instrumentation, a clock, a nice glove box with a makeup mirror, and when you remove the Targa top on a Spider, it stows neatly behind the seats. Really, the Dino does pretty much everything well. It's a comfortable high-speed touring car. It's a fun car on a back road. They're easy to live with. They're easy to maintain, for a Ferrari, of course. To buy one of the top 10 Ferraris of all time at these price points, while expensive, it sure seems like somewhat of a bargain to me. With that 4-cam V6 right behind your head, the air intake over your left shoulder, there's a lot of visceral excitement in here. The 5-speed gearbox, when it's warmed up, clicks through the gears through its gated shifter. There's a lot to like in a Dino, and this buyer's guide is not intended to tell you everything you need to know, but it is intended to whet your appetite and get you excited about one of the Ferraris that excites me an awful lot. These are fantastic road cars. They've stood the test of time. They're one of the most beautiful designs to ever roll out of Ferrari. You sit in this deeply sculpted bucket seat. You look out over bulging front wheel arches. You have that noise I mentioned behind you. That noise. It just never gets old. So for all the people that still think a Dino is not really a Ferrari, it's not a true Ferrari road car, my advice is don't knock it until you try it.